going on? It's good to be here today. Anybody excited to be in church today? All right, that's right. Hey, how many know when you come to church, when you come to pursue God, you come to pursue worship, God's going to meet us here, and there's going to be transformation. Like wherever God goes, something changes, right? And so I know that's what's going to happen today. I'm looking forward to that. Hey, my name's Tim. If you don't know me, that's my name. I'm the student pastor here at Sarasota Christian Church. If you're here maybe for the first time, you should have got a communication card. If you would just engage with us on that, maybe write your name on there, so we know that you were here and how we might be able to connect with you. You can drop those off on your way out today. Man, we're in this series called Family Troubleshooting. How many of you need some help with those family relationships? Like, come on, somebody give me some prayers today. There we go. All right, so I know that, all right? Don't come in here acting like everything's great. Okay, I know. All right, today I hope that, as in this whole series that we're talking about relationships, we're hoping to provide you with some practical biblical help that will encourage all the relationships in your life. And today, we're going to focus on the parent-child relationship, okay? And I realize that some of you have already exited out of that, at least immediate parenting, but there's going to be something in here for you today, no doubt about it. All of us in here are children of somebody, and I'm going to try to give you some advice from the child angle and from the parent angle as well. So whether you're young or you're old, whether you're in school and college, you're a parent, you're a step-parent, husband, wife, maybe you're divorced, grandparent, a friend, there's something that you're going to get out of today, because we all have an incredible responsibility and a vested interest in the relationships in our life, right? And not only that, but I think deep down in us, we want those relationships to be great. We want those relationships to be important and thriving. Those are the things that we want. And it's interesting enough that Hollywood has been able to put together a highlight reel of my kind of experience in parenting and child relationships. I've been on either side of these conversations. I want you to check out this video. This is great.
What do you want? What do you want?
It's not that simple.
What do you want?
You can do it. Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Don't ever do that again. You can't win.
Why are you the way that you are? Honestly, every time I try to do something fun or exciting, you make it not that way.
I meant what I said, and I said what I meant.
Please go away. Let me sleep for the love of God.
I love you.
Well, I don't know how they got that, but that's like, I've said that as a parent, I've heard that as a child. Either way, or you can kind of go around that. Totally stole that from my life, I think. Hey, I have two children, 6 and 3 years old. I'm going to put a picture of them up here, Elena and Brielle. And, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that the number one parenting tip you need is ice cream. Like, seriously, just ice cream solves all problems. So we can be done here. No, seriously, though, my kids are the cutest kids in the world, okay? I'm sorry, yours aren't. Mine are, okay? That's just the way it is. They're adorable. They're great. And the coolest thing about all that is I get to be their dad. Like, that is so cool. Like, I get to go home and see these kids every day of my life right now, and it's awesome. Honestly, the other day, Brielle on the phone with me. She's 3 years old. We have phone conversations all the time, okay? It's very interesting. The other day, she told me, she said, "Hey, Daddy, I'm getting bigger." And just kept saying that over and over. I'm getting bigger. And I'm like, yeah, sweet, yeah, you're getting bigger. And then she goes, pretty soon, I'm going to be driving you around. That's what she told me. And I'm like, that's probably true at some point. I actually have an app on my phone that kind of counts down the days that I have with my kids in my house when they kind of have to be there, right? Like up until graduation, when they're adults and they can choose to go to college or whatever they want to do. I have an app that tells me how long I have in my house, and I checked this week, and with Elena, I have 572 weeks left in my house that she has to be there. No choice about it. That's 572 Saturdays that I have left with my 6-year-old girl in my house until she graduates high school. Brielle has 729 weeks, so I've got a little more for her. But when I think about that, it really seems like not very much, when you think about that. And those of you that have kids that have grown up and went out of your house, you know that it's like that. In fact, don't tell me my kids are getting older, okay? I don't want to hear that. I don't want to think about that. I want to pretend they're going to be there forever. So I have to think about this as a parent. What am I going to do with that time? Like, Like, what's my goal here? Like, after all this time I spend raising them in my house, what do I want for their life? Like, what do I want the major things to happen as they step into adulthood? What do I want? And so the first thing I probably would say is I really want them to choose a relationship with God. At some point in their life that they would make the choice for themselves to love and passionately pursue Jesus. I know that that's the way of truth and life and hope, that they're never going to have what they need without him. I get that. I really want them to choose that. So that's a big goal I have. Another goal I have as I look at that, transition out of my house, I want them to transition into successful adulthood, right? I want them to pursue their passions. I want them to go wherever they feel like they need to go. I want them to accomplish some stuff. I want them to be happy. I want them to have good friends. I want them to have a family of their own one day. Like, I just want them, whatever that successful transition looks like, I want that for them. And the other thing I want, maybe as we go through here, you'll see why I think this is so significant. But I want them, when they graduate, when they can leave my house, I want them to choose to have a relationship with me, right? I said I want them to choose to have a relationship with God, but I want them to choose to have a relationship with me. I want to be involved, because when they turn 18 and they graduate, they don't have to anymore. They don't have to be there unless they want money. They don't have, they don't have to be there. They don't have to be there. Andy Stanley says this, and I've kind of, latched onto this phrase. He says, the goal of his and his wife's parenting are when their kids were old enough to choose to be around them, that they would choose to be around them. Like, they're like, we know we did it right when our kids can choose to be around us or not. And they actually choose to come and be around us and grace us with their presence and kind of build that relationship. And I don't know about you, but when my kids grow up, and they're young right now, more than anything, more than their success, more than their wise choices, more than who they choose to marry, more than what they do, maybe even more important than how strong their faith is, I want a relationship that is close with them. Like, that's what I want. Whatever that looks like as an adult, I want that. I want them to choose that in their life. That's what I want. There's this house that's being built across the street from mine right now. It's been going on kind of all year. And we joke around a lot at home and tell the girls and say, hey, they're building this house for you guys. Like, when you grow up, you're going to live there. And they love this idea, and it's great. I love the idea, you're right across the street, we're close. Like, that's what I want. Like, seriously, if I was selfish, that's what I want. Live over there, let's be close, let's do this thing. It'll be good. I want to be close, even if that means they follow their dreams all over the world, and they're not physically, geographically around me. I want to be in contact with them as often as possible. I want them to choose to want to call me. I want them to choose to visit me. I'll definitely, hopefully, be at a place where I can do those things too. But those are things that I want as a parent. I'm just being honest. That's what I want. That's what I want. And I know deep in your heart, wherever you're at with your children, whether they're young or they're old, that somewhere in there, that's what you want too, is a close relationship with them in your life. That's what you want. And here's a secret, all right? That's what our kids want too. That's what they really, really want. They were born with that inside of them, to want that connection with you. It's something that every teenager, every adult, every child wants to have, a close relationship with their parents. Even the teen who gives you one-word answers wants a close relationship with you. Even your 5-year-old that never listens to you or does what you ask her to do, she wants a close relationship with you. Even your adult child who barely talks to you anymore, somewhere in there, there's a desire for maybe what's happened to somehow be made amends and there to be a relationship somewhere deep in there. Even your stepchild who maybe doesn't respect you, and maybe they don't want to be as close to you as like maybe a biological child, but they don't want a total failure of a relationship either. I think that our kids want to have relationships with their parents. I think that's fair to say. And so the number one goal of our parent-child relationship should be the relationship. Like, that should be the number one goal that you pursue. It's not all this other stuff. It's when we raise them, and as they're growing up, as they're adults, the number one goal, and it never stops, you don't ever stop being a parent, right, is a relationship. You want a relationship with your kids. That's the number one goal. So what we do today in the life of our children, and we know this, will affect the choices they make later. It will have an impact. One day, Every kid grows up and they get to choose whether or not to have a relationship with you or I. Every day, one day in their life, a kid's going to grow up and they get to choose whose advice they want to follow, whether it's yours, somebody else's, cultures, their friends, whoever. One day all kids grow up and your example, your influence will always, always, always have an impression and an effect on them. Chuck Swindoll says it like this: every day of our lives, we will make deposits in the memory banks of our children. Every day. Every word, every response we give, every action we take, every single day matters. Every conversation matters, every word matters, every attitude matters, everything matters, and we have to be in control of that on our end. See, there is a destination that I want my child and I to end up, and that's a close relationship. But if I were to be honest with you all this morning, to be transparent with you all, through my daily mistakes and choices, you wouldn't be able to tell that that's my number one goal. That's just the way, so often, I parent for today more than I parent for tomorrow. Sometimes I parent out of my emotions more than I parent out of wisdom. Sometimes I overreact more than I'm patient. Honestly, I blame a lot more than I'm honest with myself. And so often as a child, so like if you're in here and you're like, I'm not a parent, I'm going to check out. No, like you're still a child. So as a child, you still have a parent. Even if you're an adult child, you still have a parent. You can kind of apply some of this stuff. As a child, I often assumed when I should have asked. Even as an adult, oftentimes I was selfish when I should have been selfless. And I got to tell you, as a child, I've been super disrespectful. Like super disrespectful to my parents when I was younger. Even as an adult man, times where I've said things or done things that probably shouldn't have been that critical, probably shouldn't have been that judgmental, probably should have been a little more forgiving and understanding. So what do we want? What I believe we want is a strong, close relationship with our kids or with our parents. And so how do we get that? What roads do we need to choose today to get to that destination? You got to realize this isn't something you can choose today and get it tomorrow. This is years and years of effort. And so maybe you're here today and you're like, well, I don't know if that can ever be fixed. And I'm going to say, well, it starts with one good decision at a time, that can be healed. One good decision that you're going to do based on what you hear today. And so, there's this video I found that I think offers just a ton of insight to the parent-child journey of, getting to this goal of a relationship together. I found this video. I think it's going to be inspiring. I want to show it to you guys. Oh. I think he's going to make it this time. Let's see. I don't know if I should do it. Maybe. Let's go for it. Oh, no, not happening. Oh, he's barely hanging on. Look at that. Whew. And he made it through. After all those obstacles, right? All those mistakes, all those failures, all those things. See, we have a path and vision to get to our goal of a good relationship. But the bad news is, for both parent and child, so both of us, is this relationship's going to be hit with obstacles. That's going to attempt to throw us off. It's going to attempt to make us go off-road with where we want to go. It's going to get rough. We know this. We're going to lose direction sometimes. Someone's going to fail the other one. And honestly, as a parent, and even as a child, you're going to feel stuck in that relationship, or you're going to start to feel really annoyed, tired. And sometimes you might just be tempted, I'm tired of getting, hit with that same thing. I'm just done. I'm just going to go off the side. That's it. I'm just giving up on this. And see, the thing is most of us are going to make mistakes. All right? If you have small kids, they're gonna screw up. They're gonna go off road. They're not gonna do everything you tell them to do. Sorry to break your heart. That's the way it's gonna be. If you have a toddler and you send them somewhere, they're probably gonna bite another kid at some point. That's probably gonna happen. Most likely at dinner time, they're gonna say, "I'm not eating that." Right? We've all been there. They're gonna refuse that. Some kids will refuse to go to bed when you tell them to. Most kids, as you raise them, will get bad grades. at some point, and you have to deal with that. Most kids will disobey you to your face. Like, boom, there it is. Most of your kids at some point will procrastinate. Most will lie to you about something. Most will make poor friend choices sometime or another in their life. Most of our kids will do something they majorly regret. Like, most likely they're going to do something that's a huge learning experience. And our kids are going to be tempted by something that wants to take them off road, just like we are. Just like we are. They're going to be faced with human, tendencies and temptations to just go off road and to do what we're being tempted to. And maybe it's things that we have control over, but we forget that they're still kids, or that they're still young, or they're still in that stage that they haven't had a chance to conquer those obstacles yet. Sometimes I can be one of those parents that likes to blame other parents. Anybody else like to do that? Like, I like to blame other parents for my kids' poor behavior. Like, it just makes sense to me. Like, it goes like this, all right? I send my daughter to school, and she comes home with a new behavior, right? Behavior I've never seen before, a behavior that I don't like. And it becomes a repeated pattern. And so in my mind, logically, I'm like, some rotten kid taught her this, right? Boom, I go right there, that rotten kid. And then I go, some rotten kid's parents need to fix that because they're rotten too. Like, just kind of go there. I want to blame them. It's their fault, all this kind of stuff. And that happens, and I kind of go there sometimes. Here lately, I've noticed this tendency in my kids to kind of get loud, like to get emotionally upset at things that are happening, whether it's conflict with each other or with me or all this kind of stuff. And I want so badly to blame somebody else for that. Like, I want to be able to be like, haha, it's your fault. Get it fixed so my kid's fixed. But I know exactly where that comes from. It comes from me. That's why they're so emotionally bent and can lose their temper sometimes. That's me. And I've got to remember that. And, I've got to know that sometimes, my child makes mistakes, and the reason behind that is me. Some of the time. Actually, a lot of the time, okay? I'll just be honest. A lot of times my fault. Do you ever just look at other parents and they're just like, wow, how did you navigate that? Like, how did you handle that meltdown? Or how did you work your kid through that stage or that hardship? And you just see them with this tough parenting situation, and they just navigate it beautifully. And you're just looking at them, and you're just like, how did you do that? Like, how did you come out? I'm like this with my wife all the time, honestly. Like, I look at her and how she handles my young children, and I just watch her patient and calm responses. And I'm just like, wow. How are you able to keep it together? How are you able to be so patient with them and just let them do all that? Because if that were me, let's just say that she's more patient than I am. If that were me, sometimes I feel like I could never do that. Like, I can never master that skill as a parent, to be honest. Like, I'm just so impatient or, that kind of stuff, especially on a long day, right? Or in this season or whatever. And I think to myself, and this is not a good thought process, but I think to myself, man, I could never respond in that way. Like, I don't think I could ever do that the way that she does that or the way that they do that. The problem is, here's the problem, that's the way my kids need me to respond. Because the way that I'm responding is not working. It's just not. And so I need to rethink that because I have a goal, and that goal is to have a thriving, good, close relationship when they're older. And I need to understand that means I'm going to have to make some adjustments in myself. So you might not be easily angered or short-tempered like me. Maybe you are. Maybe you're great with patience. But maybe where your flaw is in your parenting is that you're just kind of apathetic about jumping in there. Like, you're just too passive. You're not as involved as you need to be. You're not providing the guidance that you need to. And kids are just going somewhere else for that kind of stuff. Maybe you struggle with comparing all the time your kids to other kids' behaviors and stages. Why aren't my kids at the same stages as these other kids? And you kind of put that on your children. Maybe you're struggling to relate well to your kid anymore because they've just kind of changed so much and they're into this and you're not into this. And it's kind of a struggle. And maybe they're an adult and you don't even know how to start a conversation anymore because it's been so long. All this kind of stuff. Maybe you're just not present as much as you need to be, especially while they're in the home. You're just too busy. You're overscheduled. And here's the reality. When you're not there, it has an effect just as much as somebody who is there and is boisterously loud and saying a whole bunch of wrong things. Like, it has a similar effect. So maybe if you're a child today, you're not a parent, but maybe you are more short-tempered towards one parent or the other, right? There's one parent that just really gets under your skin. Maybe it's a step parent. Maybe you're different to your friends than you are to your parents, like you're nicer to them. You know what I mean? Like you're just nicer to them, and then your mom and dad get just like the real you and all that kind of stuff. Maybe you're just kind of selfish right now, like just everything in your life's about you. Maybe you struggle saying thank you at least once a day because those clothes didn't clean themselves and breakfast sure didn't make itself, and that fun night that I paid for with your friends, you paid for that, right? Oh, nope, you didn't. So maybe that thankfulness in your heart needs to change. Maybe you're holding some kind of grudge towards a parent today, maybe because of something they did, something they didn't do, and you're kind of holding this grudge. And honestly, the tighter you hold on to this thing, it might be the reason, it might be the thing that's holding you back in your life right now because of how tightly you're gripping this thing that you're holding on to, that honestly you just need to let go of that. You need to move past that so you can get to where you need to go in your life right now. So what do we want? We want a close, thriving relationship with our kids. So what do we do? How do we get there? What do we do if one of our kids goes off road? What do we do if the parent just kind of bails and goes out of order? Like how do we get this? And so Paul in the book of Ephesians, so if you have a Bible with you or a phone, an app on that, you can go to Ephesians chapter 6. In the book of Ephesians, there's 4 powerful verses on this topic of parent and child relationships. Now, the first 3 chapters of Ephesians are all about who God is, what God does for us, how he sent Jesus and saved us through the gospel, and what lengths he went to ensure that we could have a relationship with him. That's chapters 1 through 3. Chapters 4 through 6 are all about our response to the Father God saving us and doing everything he could to be close to us. And that's our response. And so if we were to look at this, chapter 6 talks about parenting and child relationships. The one right before that is on marriage into chapter 5. So which seems to suggest that if you want to have some good relationships with your kids, you should probably have a good marriage. And the verses right before that talk about how you can have a good relationship with God. And if you want to have a good relationship with your wife, you might want to have a good relationship with God. And so it kind of all just builds on one another here in this verse. And so let's dive in and read this together. This is good stuff. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1. Children, so it's talking to children here. Obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, so that it may go well with you and that you may enjoy a long life on the earth. And all the parents said, amen. Now, Tim, now we're getting there. You seeing where I'm coming from? My kids definitely need to respect me. God says so. It's right here. I got a chapter verse. It's right here. They need to do what I say. They need to listen to my advice. Even when they're adults, they need to honor me with all of my requests and needs. And everything I ask them, they need to do. No questions asked. I mean, look, right there, Tim, it even says that it will go well with them if they do this. I mean, why don't they get this? Like, follow my advice. You're going to figure it out. I mean, it's the first commandment with a promise. So let's spend 20 more minutes now lecturing our kids on how to respond to us the right way. Because we're in charge. We have position. We're the parents. After all, we have authority. That's all great, except for this one little verse that comes right after all this stuff in verse 4. It's as if Paul is trying to explain to us as parents, if you want this, if you want your kids to honor you, if you want respect, if you want a close relationship that works the proper way, here is the key. It's like in verse 4 is going to tell us everything. And can I say I hate this verse? Like, is that okay for me to say up here? Like, I don't like this verse. Like, if I could, I'd just skip over it, right? Because it suggests to me that I need to work on myself. And I don't always want to do that as a parent. That's what it suggests. And so let's look at what it says. Verse 4. Fathers, now, Mom, I see you trying to get out of this verse, okay? You're not off the hook here. However, it is interesting that it addresses fathers, which we need to be reminded of the importance of a father in someone's life. But this is for you too, Mom, all right? Do not exasperate. Everybody say exasperate. Do not do what? What are you talking? What does that word even mean? Do not exasperate your children. Instead, in place of, bring them up in the training and the instruction of the Lord. Hey, I got a question. Because I don't know what exasperate means. I don't have to do that, right? Like, I don't have to obey this because I don't know what that word means, all right? I had to look this word up because I kind of get it, but I kind of don't. Well, unfortunately, I'm about to tell you what it means, so you can't get out of it now. Especially, it's an imperative, right? So it says, do not. That's a command, right? This is God saying, do not do, parents, don't do this, don't do this. He's saying, please don't. So what do we have to do? We have to stop exasperating, and then the positive command is we need to bring them up in the ways of God. So exasperate, what does that mean? Well, I looked up some definitions, and here's some similar words. Annoy. Do not annoy your kids. I don't do that. Aggravate. Irritate. Antagonize. Irk. Rub the wrong way. I like the way the New American Standard Bible says it. It says provoke to anger. Or maybe the New Living Translation says it really, really well. Do not provoke your children to anger by the way that you treat them. The Message does a great job. Listen to this. Just listen. Don't exasperate your children by coming down hard on them. Take them by the hand and lead them in the way of the master. Wow. That's such good parenting stuff right there. If we were to look up this word exasperate in the English language and figure out where it comes from, the root word in there is asper, which means rough, which is another word called asperity, which talks about coming through a rough surface, often describing someone's temper. So you come in contact with somebody and they just kind of rub you wrong. It's rough. There's going to be some marks left with that interaction, right? And so that's kind of what we're told not to do. There's another word that's related to it, and I just want to bring it up. It's related to this word exasperate in the English language. It's to spurn or to reject. So the way we respond has the potential to rub wrong, to provoke our child to go off course, and then the potential to spurn or totally reject them in some way. So, I mean, there's so many times I tell my wife when I look at my children, I go, do you see this problem that she's having right now? Like, this is a habit, this is a repeated behavior. How did it get there? Like, we just try to figure this out. And as I read this passage, is it possible that I provoked it? That I somehow am the reason why this repeated pattern exists? Not like a one-time wrong behavior, but something that is repeated over. Did I model this? Did I incubate this? Am I actually the problem here? See, our response to wrong behaviors will affect if that behavior is going to be repeated. It has a huge impact. Think about the worst behaviors your kids have, young or old, or the worst behaviors your parents have, like the things that irk you the most, right? What have your typical responses been to those behaviors? Has it helped? Has it hurt? I mean, we've got to think about that because our parenting has a cause and effect. We can effectively cause our parent-child relationship to go off-road when we engage in an exasperating cycle of I want to show you this up here. This is something I try to pull out of this passage. I want you to look at this. This is a cycle that exists, I believe, in parent-child relationships. So there's a wrong behavior, which produces in us an emotional response as parents. We're just like, whoa, that's not what I envisioned. That's not the way we do this here, or that's just morally wrong. Whatever, you didn't live up. That's it. And so we get this response. And a lot of times that response is a feeling of anger or a feeling of pride that stirs up in us. And so that's our emotional response to wrong behavior that we see. And what we do with that is critical because oftentimes we then move around the cycle to exasperate or to provoke our child. And we provoke our children when our parenting or our personality or our words or actions or inactions causes them to feel, keep going along this little cycle here, causes them to feel rejected and devalued, which that's what happens when we provoke or exasperate. They just kind of want to pull away from you, and they start to feel devalued by you or not measuring up to you, and that affects a child in a major, major way. And all of our kids need to know, even if as they go into adulthood, they need to know that they're accepted by us, that we're proud of them, that we love them because of who they are, not because of what they did to measure up to my standards. So we've got to love and affirm them no matter what. And we can actively exasperate our kids, be loud with them. We could be aggressive, aggravated. We could criticize and threaten and condemn, point out. All that's very active exasperation. But there's passive exasperating like neglect, or not being present, or not being attentive, or apathetic, or involved. And both of those things have similar negative effects. It's not like the parents who yell are worse than the parents who aren't there. Like it's a similar kind of thing. So this feeling of rejection then produces disrespectful behavior, right? An attitude of disrespect. That's why they're disrespecting, is because they feel devalued by our provoking, because we haven't changed, we haven't responded right to their wrong behavior, which then keeps the cycle going. And I think that you can find those cycles in your relationships, even as adults. You could find, hey, this is what's going wrong. But there's a couple of tools that are important. And when I was in high school, I was in the automotive department for a couple years, and so we got to work in a shop. Oftentimes, I would use a tool like this, a little bit bigger than this, but to take off wheels of a car, and we just, not, you know that noise, right? You just take them off, the lug nuts off, you work on whatever you're doing. Oftentimes, it was brakes, and then when you were done, you'd put it back on, and you'd hit it. You'd put them all back in, and so over time, me and my partner started to get in a hurry a little bit, maybe not to care as much, and we're just trying to quickly complete a job, and so we would, pop all those on there, send the car out. Well, then we did this one time, and the next day, it came back, and a lug nut was almost completely off of the tire, which would have caused the vehicle to wreck, right, when the tire would come off, because we just were not taking our time. We were not, focusing on this particular season. We were just hitting it, and so we also neglected the advice of our instructor, who said every time you tighten a tire, you need to use a torque wrench. So like you go and you look up how many foot-pounds you need to tighten that lug nut to, so it will definitely stay close and snug to that tire. And so we just skipped that step altogether. Didn't want to take the time to go look that up. It was specific for that model, all that kind of stuff. And so what we had was a potentially deadly situation. And what I want you to notice is if you use the wrong tools in your parenting, what could happen is that relationship could start to come apart and not be as close as you want it to be. And so you need to use the right tools to make sure that it's as close as possible and secure for the journey of life, because it will have its bumps and it will have its roads that twist and turn. And just like that, there's going to be 4 tools I want you to choose in place of maybe what you're doing now or what's easier for you to do right now, maybe because it's the way life is. But 4 tools to choose in this journey, in this child-parent journey, whether you're a child or a parent, for the relationship. I want you to choose these. And these all come from God, okay? These are things I see in God from the gospel, and how he tries to relate to us and how he tries to parent us, so to speak, because he is our Father. And so I think if we want to learn this, we need to figure out how God the Father, who's probably better than all of us, did this stuff, all right? So I want to look at some of these. The first tool I want you to choose is I want you to choose modeling over mandating, all right? Modeling over mandating. It goes like this. If you want to see consistent behaviors in your children, then you need to have consistent behaviors. If you want your kids to talk to you with respect, or your parents to talk to you with respect, or whatever, then you need to talk to others with respect. Everyone. Even the person at the store, especially your spouse. Your kids watch that stuff. If you want your kids to talk in a certain tone to you, what tone are you using to talk to them in? They're going to model what they see more than they're going to do what you're mandating. If you want your kids to have a relationship with God and love attending church and all that kind of stuff, then you need to have a relationship, visible relationship, passionate relationship with God. And you need to love attending church, and you need to be involved, and you need to be in a life group, and you need to be serving, and you need to be making it a priority in their life, because they will watch what you're modeling. If you want your kids to hang out with you when they're older, then you need to hang out with them while they're younger. If you want your kids to do something that impacts the world, what are you doing to impact the world? What am I doing to impact the world? If you want your kids to have a great marriage, are you doing what you need to have a great marriage? If you want your kids to be healthy and active, are you healthy and active? If you don't want your kids, if you want your kids to learn how to handle their bad temper or their issues, what are you doing about yours? Like, what are you doing to figure out what's going on with you? If you want your kids to do their homework and get good grades in school, how are you doing at work? Are you meeting your deadlines? Are you getting your good performance reviews? You see what I'm saying? Like they're gonna watch you model how they're supposed to live. You will struggle to mandate from others what you don't model yourself. We must never devalue the importance of our consistent behavior. So identify some family values that you have, especially if you have young kids. These are things we value that take priority in our life, like we value church. And so here's the behavior. Because we value church, we go. We go. On Sunday, we go. We go to life group. We do this kind of stuff. That's what we value. Kids, this is what we value. See, mom and dad are practicing this, and so you need to. We value reading the Bible. Mom and dad's reading the Bible, and so you need to this is something that they'll see and watch. We value honesty, so you need to be honest to them, to your spouse, everyone. And it just kind of, these are the values. This is who we are as a family. This is what we're going to be. We value listening. Do you want to be listened to? Well, you need to listen to your kids, too. And that kind of thing. And so you model the things you value. And you identify some of those things. Maybe you need to do that. Think about God. Think about God the Father, all right? He created us in his image, and his ultimate vision for us is to be with him in relationship and to eventually be conformed to his image. So what does he do? He sends Jesus to tell us everything we need to do in our life and then goes back up to heaven, right? No, he doesn't do that. He comes down, he takes on human flesh, he steps in our shoes, and he models for us how to have relationships and how to care and have compassion, how to be a friend. He just models this. He doesn't just say this and this and this and this and this. It's him coming into our world and saying, all right, let me show you. Let me model this for you. I'm not going to ask you to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. And so that's what he does. And that's just awesome. The next tool I want you to think about is choose confidence over criticism. And this is so important. Imagine that video I showed you guys earlier of the obstacle and the little person running across and the things that kept hitting them. Imagine that's the picture of your child's journey to succeed. They're part of the relationship. And the spinning things, then there were the obstacles, the temptations, the fears, the expectations, the struggles they face every day to kind of measure up to that. And imagine if one of those things picks them off and they get hit and they fall and they don't measure up, or they get knocked down in their attempt to live out what they want to do. And then they get up and then they get hit again. Imagine if the voice behind that, if you're kind of watching from the sidelines as the coach of their life, is, come on, you can do better than that. Get up. Stop making that mistake over and over. You're doing this wrong. You're doing this wrong. I mean, why do you keep letting that hit you? Man, you're never going to make it like that. Figure it out. Come on. Come on. That's criticism. That's strong criticism, and that doesn't work at all. I mean, does it work for you? It doesn't work for me. When was the last time you chose to encourage confidence in your kids through their mistakes instead of saying and coming at them so easily? I mean, what if you were encouraging, like, you can do this. They make a mistake. Hey, you can do this. I believe in you. Hey, it's okay if you mess up. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with your mistake. You're going to get it. I love you no matter what. Hey, I'm here if you ever need me. All right? I'm not going to police your life like that. I want you to know that I'm here. I can't criticize every step, because if we become overbearing in criticism, they're going to tune us out. It's going to wear them out, and they're going to be disrespectful and all this kind of stuff. And that's just the way it is. Dale Carnegie wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People. Genius guy. Book. Here's a quote from it. If you and I want to stir up resentment tomorrow, that may rankle across the decades and endure until death, just let us indulge in a little stinging criticism, no matter how certain we are that it is justified. Wow. Isn't that the truth? People that don't want to be around people that criticize them. That's just the reality, whether or not it's true or not. So here's a few good questions that you can go by when you want to criticize your kids, especially if they're older. But even if they're younger, maybe you should ask, will they respond to something else better? Like, do I have to make them feel rejected and devalued, or can I do something else to help in this scenario? Maybe you can just redirect them. Instead of saying you did this wrong, maybe you can just redirect them to an appropriate behavior, an appropriate path, instead of telling them that they messed up 500 times. Maybe that would be a better approach. Especially if you have adult kids, don't criticize or offer advice unless you're asked, because they're adults. It's not going to help. It hasn't yet. It won't. Hold it all in. Criticism should be invited and helpful, not nagging and annoying. And it has to happen in the context of relationship. They have to know that the relationship is more important than you being right. And you've got to hold it back. You've got to hold it back, and you've got to do some other things. Think about God as a father. the Pharisees went and grabbed this woman who was caught in adultery, and they dragged her in front of him, and they said, here she is. Here's all the things that she's doing, Jesus. Here's some stones. Why don't you start lobbing them at her? Let's do it. Let's just tear her apart. Let's criticize her. She's doing all these wrong things. Let's hit her with it. And Jesus, of course, starts throwing stones at her, right? No, he doesn't. He says, hey, how about you all that don't make mistakes ever? How about you guys start criticizing and throwing stones, right? And of course, they all threw him away and said, no, we can't say that. And then Jesus, what does he do? Jesus gets down on her level, and he says, hey, I'm not going to condemn you for this. And he encourages her. It's an amazing moment. Go read it, John chapter 8, where he just lifts her up in this situation where he could have criticized her, but he didn't. But here's what Jesus does. He meets this woman where she's at. He encourages her. And then at the very end, he manages to say, hey, how about you don't sin anymore? It's amazing. He's able to address the problem, which is an emotional problem, a devaluing problem, and able to let her know that he loves her, and he's with her, and he's for her. And now she lets him speak into her life. And she goes on and hopefully sins no more, in that way. And so it's amazing we can do the same thing, because criticism just doesn't work. The third tool I want you to think about is choose to be accepting over alienating. See, we can't choose the kids or parents that we have, but we can choose to do the things necessary to have a good relationship. Some behaviors we're just never going to like, all right? You can't just keep attacking those things. Like, you've got to at some point choose that having a relationship is more important than pushing them away. It's just more important. Accepting is not condoning. Accepting doesn't mean that there's not going to be consequences. And by the way, parents, natural consequences always work better than yours. They just do. Accepting is not the same as love, but at some point we've got to accept this is who mom is, this is who dad is, this is who this kid is, and I'm going to love them because that's what they need. That's the way you're going to influence them is through love. How does Jesus influence us? Through commandments, through criticism? No. He influences us through love and surrender and modeling for us what we need to be. Never let a child's direction determine your decision to offer love. Never let a child's direction determine your decision to offer love. You can choose that relationship doesn't have to be based upon performance, whether you're a parent or a child. Somebody's going to make a mistake and not hold up their end of the deal, but we can choose never to let their direction determine our decision. Think about God. There's the lost son, right? We've heard the story. There's the lost son. We preached about it last few weeks ago and all this kind of stuff. He goes away. He says, I don't want to be like you, Dad. I don't want anything to do with you. I'm just leaving. Give me my money. Boom. He goes over here. He starts living a completely different way, and then he messes up a lot. He sins a lot and just does some terrible stuff. And then eventually he figures it out. He comes to his senses. He goes back to Dad. Dad has the opportunity to just lay into him, right? You did this wrong and that wrong. But that's not what the father does in that story, right? He doesn't choose to alienate him and say, that's who you are, stay away, you're rotten, I'm not going to accept you back in. But what does he do? He accepts him in. He throws a party. He celebrates the relationship. That's how God does it with us. We run off. We go back to him. He doesn't say, hey, you got to figure this out. Hey, you're my son, you're my daughter. I'm going to welcome you back in. We can learn from that. The last thing that I want you to maybe choose is positioning over position. Positioning over position. We all want the same thing, a good, close, thriving relationship. And the key to this relationship is about your positioning, not your position. So you might be a parent, you have authority, you have power, influence, advice, all that kind of stuff. But it's not about your position, it's about your positioning. What does Jesus do? Jesus, in Philippians chapter 2, we read that earlier. What does he do? Does he say, I'm going to stand up in heaven and I'm going to tell you all how things are going to work out? No. He says he didn't consider his position something to grab a hold of. And Jesus gets down and he positions himself so that he can reach us and have a close relationship with him. Why do we worship God? Why do we respect God? Why do we honor God? Because he did everything possible for our relationship. That's why we love him. That's why we respond to him. That's why we go after him. So he positioned himself. And so we've got to think as parents, what are we doing right now? As kids, what are we doing right now to position ourselves to have a thriving and good relationship? Jesus actually got down and served us out of uncomfort. And if you're a parent, don't think that that's a leadership, that's a servant leadership position. You're going to serve your kids, never get thank yous, all this kind of stuff. Why? Because you love them, and one day they're going to see that and they're going to be able to appreciate that at some point, because that's who God is and that's who we're modeling for them to be. We're going to close this message. I'm going to close it with a story. I like stories. So the other day, I I get to see my daughter Brielle after she gets out of her preschool class, which is in that hallway, almost every day. And so about 1:30 in the day, she usually comes and finds me, and she's just so excited to see me, and just usually runs. It's like, Daddy, and just like jumps her arms all over me and stuff like that. And I love that. I mean, that's awesome. And so this particular day last week, she did that, and we're heading out the door over here, so she can go home for the afternoon. And her friends start coming down this hallway over here to go outside to the playground. And she notices them, and I have her on my arms, and her face is back that way, and she just yells, "Hey guys, this is my daddy. This is my daddy." And I'm like, that's right, I'm a rock star. Yeah, this is cool. She loves me and all this kind of stuff, and she wants to tell them who I am, and she's proud of that. And honestly, after that happened, I just started thinking, I'm like, that's awesome. Like, I hope that every time she introduces me to her friends, to the people in her life, that she has the same passion, the same emotion. Hey, this is my dad. This is my dad. Check it. I want you to meet my dad. Maybe if it's a child, you want to be like, hey, this is my child. This is who they are. Like, we want that, right? That's what we want, is a close relationship with them. That's the goal. And so we have to ask the question, what are we doing today to position ourselves for that relationship? It might take time, but it's never too late to show your kids that you love them. It's never too late to love your parents and to let God impact that relationship. And God himself loves us through the gospel, right? And that's what motivates us to love our kids and to do everything for our kids. That's how we live out the gospel, is by loving them. I want everybody to stand this morning. And in this time, if you want some prayer, I'm going to be in the back, and I'll pray for you. I'll pray for your parent-child relationship. You might be like, I don't know if I want to do that, but please come back so I can pray for you. There's something that happens when we pray. Right now, just respond to God. Tell him how good he is. Tell him you want to be more like him. Just worship him.